Good evening. Thanks for being here. Before I get into my report, I thought I'd give you just a little bit of info concerning the fun times we had during the power outage. I'll tell you, I didn't like it. I just prefer we don't do it again. Park came back up in phases, so you have the north side of the park came back up first. It was off for about 26.25 hours. The south side of the park back up in 28.75 hours. During that entire span, we used just shy of 400,000 gallons of water out of storage, keeping people up. I'll say, for the most part, I think people were pretty good about only using water that they needed to use. There were a few people at the beginning, I think they were bored because the TV wouldn't work, so they went outside, decided to wash their cars. Not a good thing to do. I think we gathered some valuable information. We ran around, because the SCADA system's out, we have to go back to horse and buggy, but we were just getting away from it, and go look at the tanks manually, so we're driving around in the park in a big loop. So every 2 hours we were checking the tanks, check drawdown rate, because we didn't know how long power was going to be out. It's going to be a nightmare if the tanks go dry, because the system will depressurize whatever's connected to that tank, and that sets off a whole chain of events that none of us want to have to deal with, because I guarantee you it would probably be at least 7 days after I was able to put water back in that tank before I could turn the water back on to the people serviced under that tank. So we were going to try and avoid that at all costs. The other thing is Murphy's Law pretty much tells me that if the tank goes dry, that's when the fire will start, because there won't be any water to fight it. So I want to hold water in the tank and in the system, keep the system pressurized so we don't have to go through a bunch of disinfection and testing and flushing and all this. And I want to maintain water in there for fire protection, because again, that's why they're shutting off the power, is the threat of fire danger. And so we want to make sure we have water for that.
So do we have any lower limit that we'll start turning meters off so that we can preserve the water for firefighting purposes?
My plan was really based on the tank, because tanks have a different number of customers connected. So a tank, say this 1 million gallon tank on Revis Road, has the largest number of connections feeding off of that one tank. So I would probably start shutting off service connections there somewhere when it hits about 10 feet.
Which is what percentage of the total?
A little less than 50%, because it's going to take time to get them all shut off. Water usage is going to continue, the tank will continue to drop. I want to try and keep about 8 feet of water in there.
Can we isolate the tank at a
You
minimum level?
can, but you'll depressurize the mains.
It will leak, yeah.
People using the water. The second you depressurize those mains, I got to go through the disinfection process and all that. Plus, any place along those mains that we don't have a good way to get air introduced, it'll create a vacuum and collapse the main and break it. And then we've got to repair all that. So I need to shut off individual meters. That's going to be very time consuming, so we'd have to
So are you confident that the leak rate between the tank and the individual meters is not going to continue to draw down the tanks at an unreasonable rate?
Well, when you don't know of any leaks, I mean, obviously there could be leaks in the system and we're not aware of it. Right now, we don't know of any known leaks, but that doesn't mean that there's not. I will tell you, I've tried to throw some numbers together for tonight. Tank 2 up on North Dome, that services 192 connections. We had a usage out of that tank over the entire course of the outage of 23,333 gallons. We lost 1 foot, 1.5 inches out of that tank over the whole period of time. Tank 4 down a Long Hollow, that one servicing 236 connections. We lost 1 foot, 8 inches, 34,792 gallons. I was happy to see that's all we were losing. That correlates to about 122 to 148 gallons per connection over the course of the outage. Tank 1 and Tank 3, I haven't separated out how many meters are connected realistically to each of those tanks. Tank 3 will be the largest of that number. Tank 1 only lost 2 foot and a quarter inch, 84,000 gallons out of the motor. Tank 3 lost 6 feet. You take tank 1 and tank 3, add them together, divided by the remaining number of connections connected to both of those, and it was over 230 gallons per connection, which is significantly higher than the other locations. And I know when I drill this down, the majority of that usage per connection is going to be out of tank 3. Now, whether because it's larger and we had more people there just kind of going out and watering or doing whatever, or we have undiscovered leaks that were causing that, I can't tell you that. I will tell you, if the power had not come back on yesterday, today we would have been at the point of starting to shut meters off connected to that tank. Power did come back on, so that was a blessing.
Now, when we shut meters off, do we have a way to prevent, I mean, are they shut down where the customer can't go out there and turn it back on when we leave? So
No.
then that creates a problem with people turning the water back on?
No, but if we had enough locks, we could go out there and lock them all, but I need 2,000 locks. And I just don't happen to have 2,000.
Not enough people.
Did you have the manpower to even turn them off yet?
Yeah, that's the thing. We would pull people from every department. I already told Mr. Mahan he was coming out. I was going to commandeer people. And so, if you figure if you get 50 people together, turn off 1,000 connections, they only have to do 20 apiece, and get there. So we could have done it. It still would have taken some time. As soon as the power came back up, we got the wells back on, we'd have to turn around and go get them all back on. So it would be very time consuming, but and there'd be costs associated with that, but nothing like what it would be if we just let the tank go dry. So I just thought I'd give you a little snapshot of this information. Again, I think people did a pretty good job. We had just finished making a plan down in the yard for, I was talking to my PG&E guy and getting a feel for things were going to be coming back up, and he actually gave me a conservative time that came up a lot sooner than what he said. But we had just finished making a plan, and I sent people out to go get a break before we come back in the evening, and all of a sudden my alarm went off for SCADA, which tells me the only way for that to go off is if the power came back up on North Oak, because that's the lead-in that sends the signal out. And the SCADA alarm that came up was over here on Lily Mountain, so it tells me power was up there. So all of a sudden I'm scrambling to call people back in here so we can start running around. It took us about 5 hours to get everything back up and the system back up 100%. But we did, and so nobody went out, out of water. Tanks never got to the point.
At least you had daylight.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had, the outdoor solar motion lights, that you can light up your yard, you set it for a minute or 2 minutes and go back off. I have some of those, and I gathered them up and I was using them like flashlights. It's running around.
I saw him in the
stuff up.
passenger seat of his van.
Had a whole front load of them in the van, so they only last so long.
Ken, can I ask a question? This tank number 3, was it at full capacity at the time the outage happened?
No tank was at full capacity. The moment that I got the first notification that power shutoffs were imminent, we came out and we started ramping up everything that we possibly could. One of the wells that was running was putting water to the golf course because they needed it over there for irrigation. We turned that to the system. We ramped up production any place we could, any place that we had the capability and had the production turned down a little. We ramped everything up, and we got extra water in the tanks, but none of these tanks were full. They're 24-foot tall tanks. They have an overflow that hits about 23 feet, so the capacity is nominal. It's not true, because if it overflows at 23 feet, you don't get to have that extra foot. But the 2 tanks were at 21.5 feet, and one of the millions and one of the half millions. The other 2, the second million and second half million, were both in the 19+ range when the power went out. So, it takes time to bring these things up. It's we can only pump so much water, we can only move it so fast, and we were pushing everything as hard as we could in the hammer winds.
Yeah, how did the people up in Lily Mountain do to run off the hydromatic system? Did we get any complaints from them? Because once the power went out, their pressure went down, once the tank, pressure tank went.
Yeah, I'm gonna take you back to December 1999. Remember, the world was gonna explode on Y2K? Everything was gonna shut down and die and quit, and we were all doomed. Early in the year, I was getting calls from the state and everybody else worried about our computer-controlled systems on our water system, and I laughed. I said, we don't even have a computer in the office. There's nothing connected to this. So we don't have to worry about Y2K. We still run with horses and buggies and squirrels. So everything was grand until the week before New Year's. And they said, hey, don't you have a hydro tank up there that supplies the top of that mountain? I said, yeah. I said, how, you got a generator, going to keep that alive? I said, I've got no generators. And they said, well, is it interconnected with the main tank? So when their pressure goes down, you can at least feed them some water. I said, no, it's not. They said, well, figure it out before New Year's. So I scrambled and dug around, found parts, because nobody had anything on the shelf available. So I dug around, found parts, made it an interconnected tie. This December will be 20 years ago I put that in. Nothing happened on Y2K. We've never had the hydro go down that low on pressure that it needed to activate and supply any level of water until yesterday. So, the work we did 20 years ago finally got to see some use today, and it worked like a dream. We went out there, had it open and made sure so we could monitor it, and it opened up. And so they got water. They never lost full pressure. They never had enough pressure to be happy about it. I mean, honestly, filling a toilet tank would take you hours. But there was always the minimum supply to not hit that point that we would have to do testing and disinfection. It would be a good place if we had backup generator that we could supply that hydro and keep that pressure up. The other good place for a generator would be a well that's over near the tank that lost 6 feet, that is a good supplier, that would have kept that tank alive a few extra days. So those would be, if we look for bare minimum generators, I would say one to run the well over there, one to run the hydro system, and we'll survive off of what we have in the tanks, and the rest it would have bought us extra time. Anyways, that's my long, short briefing on what happened during this power outage.